No, I'm ready.
You ready to be live?
Yeah,
Okay.
tell me you're on.
I'm going to turn the recording on right now. Okay, we are on the air.
Okay, we want to welcome everyone to the City of Cottonwood Heights. This is our work session, Tuesday, March 5th, 2019. It's just after 5 o'clock, so we're just a couple minutes late. Hope everyone has an agenda in front of them. It's a fairly busy agenda. We'd like to be through by 7, so we'll move right ahead and welcome Brian Allen to the meeting today.
Thank you, Mayor.
Turn the time over to you. Thanks, Brian.
Appreciate it. Well, we're down to the last week and couple days of the session, and I like to tell people that we're a fourth of the way through, but we're still got 90% of the work ahead of us because so much happens in the last few days of the session. And that this year is no different. We'll just give you an update on a few bills that we've been working on. So the container regulation bill, which would be the bill that would ban banning bags. Banning bags, right. So it was basically, it usurps local control. That bill is circled on the House third reading calendar. We have been working that heavily. Right now, I count 48 no's in there, so I don't know, and the sponsor said if he doesn't get the votes that he's not going to run it. So I'll never know for sure if my count was right, which is kind of disappointing. But right now, we have that bottled up, we think, so we're keeping an eye on it. He keeps talking about amendments that are coming, but we haven't seen anything yet. Senate Bill 107, which is a nuisance ordinance bill by Senator Fillmore, that bill is dead. I talked to Senator Fillmore, and he's like, yeah, nobody likes my bill, I'm not going to run it. And I said, well, yeah, I think I told you that when we first talked about it, like, at the beginning of the session. And he says, yeah, I should have listened to you. But anyway, that one's gone. The nighttime highway construction noise amendment bill, that one was amended. Basically created like a moratorium so that a gravel pit could only expand into existing land that it already owned, and it had to be zoned for the expansion. And it put a moratorium on any other changes as far as local ordinances and everything go while we study the issue for another year, which is like the third time this has happened. So that one, that's probably a good ending for that bill. And so that one's good. House Bill 119, the initiative, referenda, and other political activities bill, that bill has been substituted. It's now on the second substitute. It's circled on the House calendar. And there's another amendment coming because they want to clarify the language that would allow cities to, if there is a challenge to a zoning change or a development approval, that the city would be able to properly craft a defense of why they did what they did, so they could communicate that. Right now it's a little bit muddy and vague in the law, and so a lot of cities just don't say anything because they're afraid of running afoul of the law. There was some language in there that was supposed to help, but it was still a little bit unclear, so there's supposed to be an amendment coming that would make it crystal clear as to what you could and couldn't do as it relates to that, which I think is fair. I think it's just good to be able to allow everybody to present both sides fairly. So that's there. The Tier 2 retirement bill is, it's passed the Senate, it's in the House, it's been sent to a standing committee. As it stands right now, the way I understand it.
Is there any money with it?
No.
That's what I thought.
I was going to say, the way it stands right now is the cities would fund 2%, the retirees would fund 2%, or the potential retirees. And there's I think there's a 1-year appropriation right now.
5 million, right?
Yeah.
Because I thought it was 5.3 million.
Yeah, there's a 1-year appropriation for the first year, and then after that, the cities would have to pony up. So there's not ongoing money.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Body camera bill is dead. Sorry. Yeah, that's okay. The vehicle idling amendments bill we talked about earlier, that bill is now over in the Senate. It's on the second reading calendar. It passed out of the Senate committee. It originally was going to be a repeal of the law that would prohibit cities from regulating idling. Now, or enforcing, you can pass an ordinance, you just couldn't really enforce it. What this does now is it moves from 3 warnings to 1 warning, so that it's actually more enforceable as it is, but it's still not total local control. But we're a baby step closer, so maybe next year, we can get local control back on that issue. So that one's good. We helped Senator Aaron on that. The towing revisions bill, all the stuff that impacted the city has been gutted out of that bill, and it's over in the Senate, so it's moving along. There was a government enterprise bill by Representative Robertson that would force you to, if you're going to do something that could potentially compete with private enterprise, you'd have to go through this process of evaluating it, giving private enterprise. That bill rules is probably not going to go anywhere. I talked to the sponsor on that one, and he's like, yeah, I don't think I got the energy for that bill this year. The Stenquist bill on changing the form of government boards and councils, that bill is not going to move. So I've talked with him at length about that bill.
That's where everyone has to be elected at large?
Yeah, that's not going to happen. The affordable housing modification by Andreg is out of the Senate, in the House. It's a good bill. Provides some opportunity for the cities to do some things with affordable housing. The municipal business licensure, this is the one about not being able to charge fees to lemonade stands and that type of thing. That bill is stalled in the Senate, strangely enough. That's probably not going to go anywhere. There is the Rocky Mountain Power Bill on the Community Renewable Energy Act. That bill has been sent to a House Standing Committee, has not yet had a hearing. That bill is kind of a confusing bill. I've been through that bill a few times. I'm told by the people who are experts and know the bill that cities should be happy with the bill, but I just don't know. I would need you guys to tell me.
What do you think about that?
You can go.
Yeah, I think it's positive. I don't think I think it works to promote renewable energy. There's an opt-out for individual residents, and so I think it's fair. In fact, we were at the league meeting yesterday, and there was support from several of the communities, and Rocky Mountain Power was there, so I think it's a positive thing.
I talked to the sponsor about the bill, and I said,
Who's the
can you explain
sponsor
this to me? He's like, no.
Oh, gosh. I think really what it does is it tells the Public Service Commission to create a tariff to allow for cities to offer their citizens a way to be 100% renewable. Everybody's in. All citizens are in on their bills unless they opt out.
And they can opt out if they don't want to pay the extra.
Exactly.
Whatever.
Or maybe it's less. I mean, who
It
knows?
could be less.
You don't know. So you have that ability.
So, yeah, and so that one I think it looks like it's a good bill, but
it'll take years to implement.
it's got a long runway, like it was.
The one issue or question I have on it is it gives it a deadline for for cities to commit to that. And what happens if cities decide to do it after that deadline is my only question with it.
Yeah.
That's
And
because we're in it now, so we're good. Other cities, if they come in after 2019, then they're going to have to go and negotiate with Rocky Mountain Power and the Public Service
there's
Commission.
still a way to get in, but it's a little bit more of a process.
Right, and I think the reason why they did that is the utilities nervous, right? They're okay with a little, but if everybody's going renewable, there's some system issues that they worry about. So.
What was that bill number?
411.
411, House Bill 411. The amusement park safety rule, that has passed out of the House, and it's in the Senate, but we know there's some problems with it. I got your email. So I'm going to work with the sponsor on some amendments that maybe fix the problems. And the two problems that I saw were inflatables, pony rides, and other stuff that probably shouldn't be in there. And then, which I thought was kind of weird.
Well,
and then the timing of the inspecting and permit. And I'm trying to figure out how to word the language to make it workable, but I'll run it by you once I come up with an idea. So that one we're working on. The inland port bill, that bill is interesting, and it's been sent to a standing committee in the House. I've tried to talk to the sponsor about the bill. Right now, what it looks like is they're trying to create sort of this hub and spoke process where they'll have the main inland port, but then they could go out and actually have hubs throughout the state.
Yep.
The way I read the bill, I don't know if you've been through it all, but there's a provision in that it looks like the cities would have to give permission if they took existing land in the city and tried to make it into a hub. But I'm not 100% certain how, because there's so many different moving parts in that bill, and I haven't sat down and done the flow chart yet because I don't have time. And I was going to ask the sponsor, is that your understanding? Because if that is, then that's a good premise to be, and that actually puts you in a good spot because you have some say over how that happened. But I've got to get through that bill. it's a complicated bill.
So I'll just say the league is opposing that.
Yeah, they are opposing.
They
the
are
bill.
opposing it officially as of
Yeah,
yesterday.
and it does look like it's an, to me, there's other parts of it that have been overreach. I was more worried about land grab for us, although I don't know why they would want something in Cottonwood Heights for part of an inland port, but
They'd want to probably have.
Yep.
you've heard that?
Well, I mean, we
No,
haven't
I
heard that.
that rumor, yeah.
Yeah, and I've
In
tried
Conference
to.
of Mayors, we talked about that whole.
Okay,
concern, yeah.
so, and right now, it's got a long leap between here and the end of the session to get, because it hadn't had a hearing in the House yet, so it hasn't
But
been
didn't they
through the
pass it
House.
last year in like 2 days? The
Well, I
actual
mean, you have to
legislation?
remember, the House Majority Leader is the sponsor, so we can't move. So if there are specifics that you want me to talk about to the sponsor on that, I'm happy to do it, I just need to know exactly what they are.
I think we're in line with ULCT.
Just oppose,
to
just oppose it, and we're not gonna try to fix it or do
If
anything with it.
It takes away local control.
Right.
And then there is also a provision about cities can't file a lawsuit, which I think there's even constitutional issues on that, but.
Yeah, I saw that and that, yeah, I don't, that's probably aimed at Salt Lake City, but.
If it appears that it's moving forward and we can't stop it, we might want to consider some language to get ourselves out of it.
Well, and we
Right,
may.
a line that just says, these coordinates.
Yeah,
I don't know, that bill scares me a little bit.
That-
Maybe not you, Sam, but.
that, it scares a lot of people.
Because
It is,
it takes away local control, it just is another step on that.
well, and it also gives a lot of control and power to the Inland Port Authority,
Well, it takes all the
who are,
money, it takes
who are
all of our money, right?
unelected officials that they have a lot of power. So that bill is, it's a challenging bill for,
So what are you hearing as far as the status then?
I don't know, I was trying to get with the sponsor today, I couldn't, he's work, right now the
Who
taxing
is it,
is
Stuart Adams, who's the?
Francis.
Oh, it's Francis.
And he's a formidable sponsor, believe me. But he's generally been pretty reasonable with me, so I don't know, we'll see. But right now, everybody's focused on the tax bill in leadership, so that bill is sucking a lot of the oxygen out of the room. That is a huge, I mean, that's a seismic shock. It's big, and it's got every stakeholder group you can possibly imagine has been up to the Capitol talking to the leadership, talking to the sponsors of the bill. And the interesting thing, the story from everybody is conceptually, we understand why you want to broaden the base, but broadening the base is a good thing.
Don't broaden that to me.
But exactly, but don't gore my ox. And that's what everybody's saying. It's like, well, somebody's got to get gored or we never broaden the base. And so that's kind of the challenge that they're having, and I think they're listening, which is good. They are listening to everyone, and they're taking it in. The one thing I do know, and this is probably a good time to talk about that bill, the one thing I do know is that it's going to have a pretty long ramp in. And it'll be interesting to see, it may get out of the House in one place. I think it may end up at a different place in the Senate because I don't think they're aligned exactly on the timing of it. I think they're all aligned on the basic underlying concepts. I think there's going to be probably some wiggle room on what's in and what's out over time. Because originally we thought daycare was in and now it sounds like it's out. And, it's like, hey, you can't have daycare, like, you got a working mom, sort of. So, anyway, and there is a health insurance premium tax, which a lot of people aren't real happy about, especially the business community. It's like health insurance is already expensive enough, and you want to add another 1% to that. But again, I think they want to have a long enough time easing it into it to really fully understand what the bill's going to do. Talk seriously about it. I'm not sure that's really true, but that's, I think, the mentality that they have right now.
So are you thinking the way, when they explained it yesterday to us, it's 2019 is really when it starts, right? Are you hearing the Senate may push that off for a year?
It won't start until 2020, even in the House version.
I thought it.
January 1st of 2020 is the earliest start date I've ever heard.
Yeah, because there's no way that, I mean. it can't
I'm
be something
hearing
this year,
that
would
there's
be
some
crazy.
appetite to even move that now to July 1st to get to another legislative session that need to happen without having to call a special session.
Well, then I heard mayors that still want to put together a couple of stakeholder groups.
Yes.
Both representing local government and other.
That's still on, it's not going to necessarily be in the bill, but it's something they're going to do.
They have to go through that process even to determine.
Yeah, so you've got at least, it's going to be at least the earliest they could do it, in even any wild stretch of the imagination, would be January 1st of next year. So that gives us 9 months to figure it out and work on it. I'm guessing it's going to get pushed longer. And the other interesting thing is that they've talked about doing an income tax reduction, and they've talked about phasing that in 2022 to coincide with what happens with the sales tax. So that may give you an idea that there's a window of time even further out there on when this will actually all come together. So I'll tell you, I mean, I don't know that anybody's really in panic mode. I think everybody's, you know, certainly nervous about what it might mean and how it, I mean, the challenge I have is that for a city, until we know for sure how they're gonna, you know, we gotta drill down on some things, and I haven't been through the whole bill, so I don't know, it may be in the bill and I just haven't seen it yet. But I was talking to the mayor about if you have a plumber that is headquartered in South Jordan, they drive to Cottonwood Heights and fix a toilet or whatever, and then they charge a fee and then they get paid, where's the sales tax considered, where's that service delivered? Are they,
Point of
is
sale.
it gonna be, is it gonna be a point, is they gonna contribute it to his South Jordan location, or is it contributed to Cottonwood Heights? Can you imagine if you're a contractor and you do 50 jobs in a day, trying to track all the different places you go to? So there's a whole lot of things we don't know about it yet, and what the mechanics of that are going to be. And that may be in the bill, and I just haven't seen it yet, and I've gotta go through it, you know.
Still sponsor an accountant.
That's
So
what,
it's
but it's like,
work for
well, a lot of these bills, like the inland port bill, you really have to flow chart them out, because you've got all these different sections that are they interoperate, and unless you kind of connect all the dots visually, it's hard to really remember as you get through, you know, a 250-page bill, what happened on page 30 when you're on page 220. And how does that, and, you know, rather than flip back and forth, for me, I just try to flow chart out, but it's such a huge bill.
Then too, trying to put all cities in the same
Yeah.
spot. I mean, you've got a city in southwest that's growing rapidly, and you can put it in the same position where we're all built out. I mean,
Yeah.
depending upon that.
Yeah,
Have
and
a
so
rural city or town who's.
Yeah.
yeah, and
One
so,
grocery store in this
and that's the whole other thing too, is
Yeah.
it's a little fuzzy on the whole distribution model, because
Yeah.
does it become
Yeah.
population or point of sale, or point of delivery, or point of headquarters? And
But the intent is to keep the 1% and local just kind of on top of whatever state rate
Yes.
they come up with.
And that, and well, technically, but they don't necessarily want the cities getting windfall either, so
Yeah,
they may
exactly.
adjust that percentage based on what those numbers ultimately look
Then
like,
they were
so.
gonna keep it,
City
put
by
it
city.
into,
Harmless, yeah.
hold harmless and put it in the side, and then
Yeah.
distribute it later under some formula.
Yeah, and so it's a real, it's still, there's still a lot of unknown, and like I said, I'm not in panic mode, because I think there's gonna be enough time that we can really work on it, but,
We could use a computer genius to run this out.
well, the problem is getting the
See
data, because
unintended consequences.
the question is, do you know the value of the services provided here within the city?
Probably
Does
don't,
anybody
because
know?
nobody's ever tracked it.
Yeah.
And, well, the only way you could track it is through tax commission records on income tax, because ultimately, they're gotta be reporting income on it. But all you're gonna know is their income, you're not gonna know gross receipts. So,
And you're not gonna know how to
Yeah.
separate the income and sales tax as opposed to just income.
yeah, so it's a real interesting dilemma, because I don't know that that there's data that exists out there that's really gonna be helpful.
So you think it's some new language coming out this week?
Yes, there's supposed to be something coming out that supposedly the league says the city it should help the cities. I don't know if they necessarily they would love it, but it will help the cities. It should be helpful to the cities. We're waiting to see, apparently there's a substitute bill coming. But, you know, that in and of itself is a challenge, because
You get a whole fresh.
nobody's
50 pages.
digested the 255 pages that are out there, then you get a substitute bill, how do you digest all the changes to those 255 pages, so. But I believe there's gonna be enough time to really deal with it once it happens, I really do. I think you're gonna, just all I know is I'm hearing a lot of scuttlebutt in the back rooms, and I think ultimately there's gonna be enough time for everyone to react to it, because when it first was proposed, people went crazy.
Brian, is there any precedent? As in
There
other
are,
states?
there are some states who tax services, so it's not an unheard of thing. I know that when I go to, I travel the country quite a bit, and I do hire lobbyists and I hire other legal services. There's only 3 states that currently tax legal fees that I'm aware of. Florida tried it for a while, then repealed it because it got such a pushback from the lawyers. But services like lobbying fees, they're taxed in a lot of states. Like nail salons, hair salons, massage parlors, plumbers and electricians, they're taxed in a lot of places. I don't know the exact number. The other thing that I see in a lot of states that I don't have personal income tax. So you pay a personal income tax to your city or town, which is something that we don't have. And so that's why we rely so heavily on sales tax. We don't have a lot of other taxing opportunities.
Is that against statute in Utah?
What's that?
I was aware we didn't have a local. Is that actually against state statute? To have a local.
To impose a local income tax?
You can.
I gotta think.
You can impose a local income tax here.
No. Not thinking about it, I just never asked the question.
No.
Is it actually against?
And look, and there's a whole big tax discussion going on because you've got a surplus, what they consider a surplus in income tax, which is all dedicated to education. And if that weren't true, we might not even be having this discussion on sales tax. I don't know, but there's a whole lot of stuff going on.
But it's essentially a foregone conclusion this bill will pass. That's what I
I
heard
would,
yesterday. And if you're not,
We just don't know what form.
I wouldn't say it's a foregone conclusion, because there's still a lot of horse trading to go on between the House and the Senate on the bill. And there's nothing ever like totally set in stone, but there's some things that.
There's broad-based support for a change in how.
Yeah. And I will tell you, there's some things that the Senate wants that the House isn't all that excited about, and that becomes part of this give and take process. I would say right now, I would give it an 80% chance of passing and being signed by the governor. But I do believe it's going to have a long enough ramp on it so that no one's going to be in a panic mode when the bill gets signed by the governor. That's my gut feeling on it right now. Now that could change because this thing's very fluid.
Okay, any final questions?
But I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, do you know, I asked, there was, Robert Spenlow was running a bill to fix the truth and taxation reporting timelines. Do you have any idea what number that is or where it's at?
No, but I will find out and let you know.
It was just gonna move it from August 17th
He told
to
me about the bill, and I think the bill's moving along. I just don't remember what bill number is and where it's at, so, but I'll find out and let you know.
how about our appropriations requests?
I can't talk publicly about that, but it's in the works.
And I talked to Jenny about that first yesterday.
And, again, when we start talking about horse trading between the House and the Senate, that may or may not be.
Yeah.
So, just so you know. So, part of the reason that I've been treading a little lightly on the sales tax thing initially because of all the broader negotiations that are occurring. So, a lot of fun stuff, anyway, but there's still a lot of time left in the session, and we're still seeing new bills.
It's next Thursday, a week from Thursday?
A week from Thursday. So, yeah, some of the new bills are a little bit scary. So far, nothing that impacts cities, but some of my other clients are not sleeping tonight, I can tell you that.
Okay, thanks,
Thank
Brian,
you.
appreciate.
Have a good night.
Looking at agendas, let's walk through quickly our business meeting agenda.
What?
We have, Robbie, we have honorary colonels here, right?
Right, that's correct. There's one of them, yeah, there's
Just one.
a conflict.
Okay. Then there's two of us. Okay. And then there's public comment on, so, Mike, you want to explain what this public comment on?
Yeah, we have a process in the subdivision ordinance where applicants can come request minor variations from certain subdivision standards. We did one probably 4 or 5 months ago for a property on Royal Lane. And for whatever reason, the code requires that this run through planning commission and then the city council, so that's what this is. It's fairly minor in
And on
nature.
this one too, I think we, in our packet from Tim, it gave us a full summary of it, and we
Yeah.
had a petition signed by all the residents, et cetera.
Yep, and I've got a short presentation that I'll just share with you in the business meeting.
Will you make sure that I don't walk over you?
Sure.
You need to do that.
Yep.
Forget you. Okay, then we'll have citizen comments. We have 2 standing monthly reports. Lieutenant Bartlett on our police report, and then Matt will not be here, and
I'm gonna be doing
Tim will be doing our public works report. And so Matt, I'm sure you're doing something fun.
Some fun and exciting, yes, sir.
All right, good. We have 2 action items. One is signing the contract or approving the resolution to sign the contract for redesign and hosting of our city's website. I think everyone's been aware of that, so that's an exciting progress. And then, if there's no objection, we'll then look at the resolution approving the exception from the subdivision based upon the public comments, and we'll talk about it again in this meeting as well. So if we all work diligently, when we finish this meeting, we'll be able to adjourn for the night. So, any questions on the business meeting agenda? If not, moving back to our work session. Item 3A is ranked choice voting. So Tim, you want to tell us where we are on that?
Yeah, so with ranked choice voting, I think you have the information from your packet, but Salt Lake County had indicated to us that they are not going to be implementing this until 2021 or 22, I believe. And so with that, there is an option of looking at going to another county, which we are actually not comfortable with that. Utah County would be willing to do that. There's also the possibility that some of the other cities were going to look at doing this on their own, but they're not. So
West Jordan's not.
they are not. West Jordan's going to hold off and just work with Salt Lake County. We do have a contract to do elections for this year from the county that if we want your direction, but our recommendation would be to continue to work with Salt Lake County and not implement ranked choice voting this upcoming election, and work with them in the future elections, and not go to another county. We just have concerns with doing that relationship-wise as well as logistics as well. So we wanted your input on this. If you're okay with that, we'll bring the other contract to Salt Lake County for your consideration on the 19th. But that is our recommendation.
Basically, that was my understanding when we went into this. It was subject to informally making sure the county was on board and had the equipment ready to facilitate it. So I'm for you.
So 3 years for them, it takes 3 years to.
It'll be the next, it'll be 2 years from this upcoming election, so is that 2021? It'll be just the next
General
municipal election that we have.
And the real answer is, no, it doesn't, but you also have to deal with, the office there has decided that that's what it's gonna take. So that's what it's gonna take.
For implementation, purchase of equipment and other things.
I guess if you were to trust the judgment of some other people, it would be fairly simple to do, and we can do it. But it's not a priority for them, we can't really.
So are we okay with that, bringing that contract forward for the election this year with Salt Lake County?
I don't know if someone.
Okay.
Next item is talking about the upcoming referendum. I think you're all aware of after the Walsh property issue that was voted on. We've been petitioned to implement the referendum process. So we'll turn the time over to Shane to kind of walk us through the handouts we have that was emailed to you and tell us what's going to happen, what we can do, and what we can't do, and so forth.
We received a application for a referendum on February 22nd, and We reviewed that and determined that it complies with the requirements under the statute for local referenda. So we have initiated the process. The first thing that happened was the recorder informed obviously a group of folks about the referendum, but she also informed the finance director and me that we would need to commence our required process under the statutes to generate an initial fiscal analysis of the cost on the city of repealing the ordinance. And so that is underway. And the due date for that is March 19th. And so Scott and I will work together to prepare that fiscal analysis. I suspect that the main fiscal impact on the city is that the election cost will be increased for this November's election, because there will need to be the referendum process incorporated into the normal candidate election process. We simultaneously went ahead and generated the form of the referendum petition and the signature pages. The statutes are very detailed about how the signature pages in particular have to appear. They talk in terms of so many eighths of an inch in the height of this column, and this row is so long, and the sub row is so long, and the different the names of the boxes that need to be filled in this referendum petition. So we have prepared that, and we're required to submit I think 5 copies of the entire referendum packet: the referendum petition, the signature pages, and then a verification page that goes on the back of it. We had until last Wednesday, I believe, to submit that to the petition or the application sponsors, and so that was accomplished. By statute, the sponsors then were required to go ahead and incur the costs of preparing referendum packets, and each packet needs to contain the petition, up to 50 of the approved signature pages, and then a verification page on the back. And after they prepared those packets, they then are required to return those to the city recorder for numbering. And so that process was completed, I believe, yesterday, and the numbered referendum packets have been returned to the sponsors, and they can now go out and start gathering signatures. They have 45 days from the date that the initial referendum packets were submitted to them. So by my count, to gather the sufficient number of signatures, by my count, their due date is April 15th. And we received information from the Salt Lake County election clerk that in the last presidential election in Cottonwood Heights, there were 17,653 ballots cast for presidential candidates. And so by statute, since this is a land use issue, the sponsors would need to obtain signatures equal to 35% of that number. My calculator indicates that 6,179 signatures that they will need to obtain. Each of the signatures has to be of a registered voter who resides in the city, and as I said, there's a verification page that goes on each packet where the person who has actually watched them sign completes this verification, signs it before a notary public, saying that they, to their knowledge, everything has been done appropriately. The signers indicated actually signed, and as far as the verifier knows that the signatures comply with the statutory requirements.
Please say that one more time.
Yeah, that,
They have to sign before a notary?
The verifier has to sign before a
The
notary.
verifier,
Yeah.
one who watches them sign.
Yeah.
okay, so whoever's
Goes
notary
to
and says, I actually saw these people do this.
Excuse me, I am wrong. They don't have to sign before a notary. They just have to sign this verification. So I'm wrong on that. This is what the verification looks like. There isn't a notary block. So the verifier says, I'm a resident of Utah and I'm at least 18 years old. All of the names that appear in this referendum packet were signed by persons who profess to be the persons whose names appear in it, and each of them signed his name on it in my presence. I believe that each has printed and signed his name and written his post office address and residence correctly, and that each signer is registered to vote in Utah or intends to become registered to vote before the certification of the petition names by the county clerk. Then a place for the verifier's signature and then the verifier's contact information. So I apologize for indicating that verification had to be notarized. It doesn't. Here's what the signature page looks like. As I said, in each referendum packet there can be up to 50 of these, and I think there are spaces for seven signatures on each page. And then the front page of each of the packets is this referendum petition. Again, the verbiage is mandated by statute. How the signature page looks, what is to be contained in the signature page is mandated by statute. The verbiage in the verification is mandated by statute. So at this point, the ball is in the court of the sponsors and those who are pursuing this referendum, and we have received a few questions from them that we have tried to answer, while at the same time telling them that this is a new process for Cottonwood Heights as well. We are familiarizing ourselves with the statutes, and they would do well to also familiarize themselves with the statutes and obtain their own legal counsel to advise them. So that is where we are. I think that the next step will be for Scott and me to complete our initial fiscal analysis by the 19th of this month, and then we will wait to see if the petitions are filed on time with sufficient signatures. We will then turn them over to the Salt Lake County, or rather the sponsors file them directly with the Salt Lake County clerk, who goes through a process that will take probably about a month to verify that the signers are Utah residents, they're over 18 years old, and they're registered voters who reside in this city. After that, it comes back to the city for further handling. If all is well, by then we will eventually generate the question to appear on the ballot, the title of the ballot question, and go through a process. During this time, there are different appeal rights to the Utah Supreme Court by the sponsors if they're dissatisfied with how things are being handled, and ultimately, if all goes as we've discussed and sufficient signatures are received, we anticipate that this would be on the November ballot.
May I see that packet?
And each one of those is supposed to actually have a copy of the ordinance attached?
Yes.
I thought I read somewhere that it seemed somewhat hard to believe that whoever's signing is supposed to read the whole thing.
Well,
That's the requirement, even though
that's what they're supposed to be doing.
That doesn't actually occur on other cases.
Any follow-up questions of Shane?
As far as, do we as elected officials on this particular thing have any restriction on signing or not?
No, I believe that you're citizens and you can sign or not sign the referendum.
Those would be the only ones I think that might have an exception, so.
We would, as was discussed earlier by Brian, there are controls and restrictions on what the city can do in terms of talking about this. And this is potentially a ballot question, and city funds cannot be used to advocate one way or another, so it's probably going to be my advice that the city itself does not enter into this fray. We will handle mechanically the things that we are required by statute to do in full compliance with the statutes. I think that elected officials are able to say what they like within the confines of our the council's rules of procedures, rules of procedure.
Do they need to be a registered voter?
Yes, yes, they do.
Didn't it say or will be?
Or will be before the by the time it's submitted to the Salt Lake County clerk for.
Really, they have to be before it's submitted, not before election day.
What?
Nope.
They have to be a registered voter before it's submitted to the county, not before election day.
Before it's submitted to the county, because that's
where
part of the verification that the Salt Lake County clerk is going through. Yeah. So, the proponents can, propagandize whatever they would like to. I think opponents can do the same. The city itself cannot. So, the developers here, perhaps they have plans on putting out their own information packet. I don't know.
So as far as information from the city that can be distributed from our planning department, what can that include, what cannot include?
I don't, well, I guess we need to have a discussion of whether we want to go down that road. I think that we can discuss the fact that a referendum has been filed on the ordinance, and if we want to, we can explain the statutory process, and that's as far as I would recommend going. If otherwise, we just.
I mean, there's a request for historical records or anything like that. That's a standard grandma request.
Yes.
Correct.
Who has the next newsletter article?
Me.
Maybe you explain the referendum process? I thought Shelton's article was fantastic.
I've actually already written my article.
All right then.
And it's not this topic.
You said that it was April
Will we stick it in
15th?
there?
April 15th.
But the issue with it is, I guess, like Shane was saying, I don't know if we want to get into the process of trying to provide propaganda towards this.
No,
That's not
absolutely
something
not.
we can
Yeah.
do, so I probably wouldn't be comfortable with an article necessarily on it.
Well, I understand it's like general obligation bonds, that we can provide information, but we cannot take a position. Is that fundamentally right?
I think that the restriction is on the use of public funds to advocate for or against a ballot proposition.
Okay, we can't go either side, but we can provide facts.
So that's why I said, if you want to go down that road, why then it would just be a matter of explaining that a referendum has been filed on this ordinance, and this is what the statutory process is.
Well, the reason I bring it up is I think as elected officials.
It'd be too long, you'd have to add pages to the, to the newsletter now, you know that.
I believe in you. Besides when you be.
But Shane, I imagine as elected officials will all be questioned by constituents, and that's why I think my caution or your guidance is what is appropriate in our response.
An elected official is in a little different category than the city.
Right.
Do I understand that?
That's my feeling.
But who we're speaking for, I guess, too.
You're speaking for yourself.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good rule of thumb. Just make sure you understand.
That's the rule we have in the rules of procedure anyway for the council. You're speaking for yourself, and except for the mayor who can speak for the council, as long as he knows that that's in accordance with the council's position.
I do advocate for a brief paragraph from Shane, because I know he can be
A brief paragraph. Thank you, council
I believe
member.
you, Shane. I think that would be a real asset in the newsletter. Our newsletter should be informative and educational.
Shane, we'll have to talk.
I will do whatever I'm asked to do, but.
Well, thank you, Shane, for that summary. I think that helped me a lot just reading through the draft and this final one as well to make things clear. And I think the other thing that's important to note that it's a matter of factual information, that immediately after the petition came or the application for the referendum, the developer was notified, and They're on notice, and obviously nothing will proceed on the development until we get through the process. Okay. All right, Matt, you want to talk about Mountain View restroom expansion?
My favorite topic right now. Looking for a little ideas and direction from the council. You already know we had a track grant to expand the restrooms and winterize them, as well as a shade structure down at Mountain View Park. We have gone out for bid one time, and we're just too high to even consider. They were quite a few tens of thousands of dollars above what we felt was reasonable. So we dropped back and did some redesign on the shade structure itself. In other words, we made it a little bit smaller to try to accommodate a new bidding process. We went through that process, and I've put in front of you the bids that came back. They came down significantly, but still not to a point that I feel like I'm comfortable recommending that we move forward until we come up with a little bit of a solution. I've given you some number breakouts. We have approximately remaining $199,500 to construct these two projects. To construct, well, there's $110,000 from the grant, and the city put in $110,000. So that's where the money pot is from.
Minus the engineering.
Minus the engineering, which was about $20,000. That also includes project management, but $20,500.
I'm sorry, what do you mean by project management?
To be on site testing when we have just testing of materials and things of that nature. There's some work on here that needs testing and verifying and also doing some construction staking. So the need to cover, or the amount we look like we would have to cover if we just went ahead and accepted this bid, we would have to cover $36,322, which once again I feel is a little high to recommend we do. So there's a couple of options to consider. And this is where I guess I'm looking for a little bit of help. Excuse me. We can try to turn around and return the grant, I guess, and just go from there, but I see a few shakes of heads, so I will move on from that option. We can also try to either eliminate the shade structure or try to reduce it again to see if we can come up with a $30,000 savings.
How much of that is the shade structure?
It's about 65,000 of it, 70,000.
You can do two 10 by 10 canopies that are single pedestal with cantilever over that rotate. It's about 18,000 a piece. If you go to Cottonwood Heights outdoor pool, you'll see some big yellow ones that are next to a water structure. My recommendation, just to throw it on the table, is that the priorities of the restroom, which we had before, have shade structures we can modify and go back down. So fund 2 to 3 of those and put them around the splash pad to do 10 by 10. You do different colors.
That's what we.
Well, yeah,
that's what we were.
We were looking at. Our recommendation is we do something with the shade structure itself. That there's also, and I try. You were in a meeting, so I apologize if I'm stepping out here on this one. There's also the option on the restroom that we do winterize it, but we don't expand. One of the reasons we are expanding the restroom was it originally started, let's just expand it and keep one area available for winter and then close the rest. But if we were going through that process, why not just make the bathroom available? I mean, people use the park in the winter. It gets just as much use in the winter as it does in the summer, so why not leave it available? One of the other options is to possibly take the restroom, fix that such that we can bring heat into it, winterize it, and just make the existing restroom available for winter use year-round as well. I mean, that it takes off the extended structure, which was ended up, I believe, 2 to 3 stalls on each side, the men's and women's side. But if we take that, we can maybe take some of that savings and work within the structure as well. There's a few things that, and we still meet the requirements of the track grant. So there's that option as well. I wanted to toss that out there. And that gives us a little bit more money, I think, to maybe instead of 2 wing shade structures, maybe 3. There's just a couple of options. So and if we go that route, I need to look into, and I'll probably need to talk to Shane about this, some of the bidding on that, whether or not we have to do another bid for the restroom, I'm not sure, or we take the contractor as is and modify the contract and go from there. So there's a few things I need to look at on there, but one is the priority. What is your priority as the council? And then I can work in that direction, is what I'm seeking. And we've thought about modifying the structure, the shade structure, but today I got to thinking about the restroom, and if we just make it available year-round, we could probably get quite a bit of savings and really enhance the restrooms
The shade
themselves.
structure that you proposed was a.
It was more of a pavilion
type
that
of
would
thing,
give
wasn't it?
another location, right?
The good thing about changing the shade structure is rather than just one shade structure that maybe one group can get under, doing several, then you can break it up for numerous families possibly could use the shade rather than one dominating the one shade or one cell structure.
And in speaking with the track grant folks, as long as we're meeting the intent of the grant, they're okay with how we distribute it. So, you know,
Have
we
you talked to those who maintain the restrooms as far as how critical it is for the expansion? Now, initially it was critical because of heavy use.
Mhm.
I know that's kind of mellowed out.
It was, like I said, it was critical because what we looked at was only the piece that we would expand, we would make available for winter. This one that we have in here now, I've got the whole restroom available for winter use. So if we just backed it off and just said take the existing restroom and make it available for winter use, I think we're meeting the intent of what they're looking for as well.
Sorry, I think you lost me there. So the bathroom's fine as it is, we just need to keep it up, open year-round? Or you're saying?
That's a question.
That's a question, is a
But you're saying that
yeah,
from a
originally,
use
part of,
perspective.
yeah, the original intent was to extend the bathroom, expand the bathroom and take that expanded section and make that winter use. And still keep the front portion of it closed.
Oh, I thought we were winterizing
No.
the whole thing.
No, but, okay, that was the
That's where we
original.
got to.
That was the original. We got to the whole thing being winterized because I was like, why are we not just winterizing the whole thing?
Right.
Why go through the expense of running the gas lines and everything there without just winterizing the whole bathroom? So after bidding it, I mean, I'm surprised at the price of an expansion of this restroom, but if we just back off the extension and just bring it all back in and just modify the restroom as it is now with insulation, heaters, and doing those sorts of things, maybe a few upgrades in there for different types of faucets and plumbing for winter use, that's an option as well.
We don't know if it's overrun in the summer, though, is that true? We don't know.
I haven't been told it's been overrun. I was told the real problem was the winter because all we bring down there are 2 porta-johns.
Well, because of the sleigh riding on the hill.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of people.
The first 2 years, because actually regional amenities in a neighborhood facility, it was bombarded between soccer players and splash pad people, but I think that's mellowed, and I was just gonna verify that, Mike, at your district, unless you've heard something, but there seems to be some logic, because it's really a nice restaurant, it's pretty good size compared to our other restaurants.
Oh, yeah.
Compared to other restaurants in the city, it's good size, so if we could winterize it, that makes some sense to me.
So what's the cost of just winterizing it plus the shade structures now?
That I don't know the answer. I just came up, I was sitting at my desk before coming in this meeting, and I thought, why not propose this?
If we don't, our match is to 50% regardless of what we do, so we.
Right, well, regardless of what we
If
do.
you reduce it by $50,000, that the city's chunk is also
Right,
reduced by.
it's
50.
also reduced, yeah.
But by just
You have to get down
winterizing,
30 just to,
yeah, yeah, but winterizing that existing restroom makes good sense. I would love to see, rather than just one single shade structure, just the south end over one pad, to put a couple more around there. Shade is critical.
Okay.
But also distribute some of the usage, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that one I haven't thought of is,
Should be
have
some
one
uses, because you've got,
solid permanent, you can have some,
if you got, it's just like the
Lot of
pavilion,
traffic.
there's a problem, as Ben mentioned, that sometimes one family gets in there and they kind of dominate it. So if we can break up the shade to have numerous around the splash pad so that more than one family would have access, would make some sense.
When did the pool put their shade structures in?
The outdoor ones, yeah.
probably form more of there, right?
No, she means originally.
Yeah, the new ones.
Oh, when did they put-
install them? When did they go through this process? When you were there?
Yeah, well, we went to when I was there, yeah. But there's 4 of those existing shade structures are right now in front of the pickleball courts too.
So somebody's done it recently.
That was very, you can talk to the county, they'll tell you the exact size.
Yeah, well, these are also, the ones you're talking about are also on the state contract, so that
Yeah.
gives us more
The
flexibility.
vendors, yeah.
Correct.
And the material lasts Sunday, and plus you can rotate them, 10 turns if you want to, and 10 by 10. But there's others, there's numerous other ones too. I'm not saying those ones, I just know those have worked well. But it would be nice to have more than one structure around that amenity.
So as far as direction, what I'm hearing is we want to stay within the budget. Obviously, we're not going to expend beyond what we have, and we need to relook at how we configure the project, which would include shade elements and also improvements to the bathroom, provided that we meet those elements under the budget funding that we have. That's what you're
Yeah, my
comfortable
priority
with.
would be, and let's count this for each. One, first would be winterization. It's critical that we winterize that because, of the damage that's done and the use that it's year round. And then 2, next winterization was having some shade. Because of the litigation we went through on some things that we need to provide some shade, even though this is not over the playground itself, I think it shows good faith effort of providing some shade and finding how you can balance your budget and do those and show an impact to the both areas.
Good.
They bring back something to us what's going to work.
Okay, I'm good. I think I got it. Thank you.
Okay, Mike, do you want to talk about what you're going to talk about inside?
I can also save it and just present one time in there. It's very simple. So if we want to get through the other agenda items in here.
Well, just
Either way.
take 5 minutes real quickly.
Sure.
You don't, if there's something here we can get answered, but.
Which
save some
page,
time
sir?
there, yeah.
I don't know. If you can just open the presentation, I'll
Sure.
figure it out. I don't remember what order I have them in.
CED, right?
Yep.
You can show the pictures in there too that you got.
Yeah, I've got some graphics. Yep. Yeah, this is the one. Do you have a pointer?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a property on Pine Creek Lane that just south out of the frame here is Creek Road. Just to the east, a little ways, mostly out of the frame, would be Royal Lane. So that kind of puts you in the area. There was a house constructed there, I believe, in the last 5 years, I believe 2014 or so. That's okay. And it was a flag lot. And a flag lot is a lot that does not have direct frontage onto a dedicated street. It's instead accessed on a driveway access, a private drive access. And you can see the subject property is a flag lot, and the property directly south of it is also a flag lot. So there's this little cluster down there of 4 homes, 2 of which are flag lot driveways. The flag lot design standards require greater lot size, and they have access standards for the makeup of that driveway. You mind going to the next slide? We also have a provision in the subdivision ordinance. I won't read it word for word, but here it is. Basically, when there are unusual cases, either related to topography, aesthetics, or other conditions, the Planning Commission and may make a recommendation, and the city council may approve an exception or a variation to the normally required subdivision standards. And the flag lot driveway requirements are in that subdivision code. So it falls under one of the standards that can be requested for this exception. Dan. So here we have the proposed ordinance and the requested exception. Normally a flag lot of this length is required to be 20 feet of travel surface. That's just compacted travel surface. And 4 feet of landscaping acting as a buffer, but on the outside of the driveway.
On the neighbor's side.
Essentially
There
on
are
the
two
side,
neighbors.
I guess you're right.
on the side that the
People
flag
in front of
lot
them and-
was not created from.
Right.
So the people next to the lot, usually you have a flag lot that's created as a result of you had a larger lot and you broke off the flag lot in the backyard.
So it's not the interior piece?
It's not the interior piece,
the
it's the
other
outside.
side.
Yep. There's also a fencing requirement that a 6-foot solid visual barrier be installed along that outside drive axis as well. This actually was what was shown on the approved building permit. And the driveway, the house was finished in a timely manner. Yeah.
This being
The required
lot.
ordinance,
Okay.
yes. So we approved a building permit 4, 5, 6 years ago with those standards shown on the plans.
They didn't build it that way?
Correct. The house was built, the driveway was not built until later. It was compacted gravel for a while, and then the owner went in and finished it later on and built it a little differently. We were made aware of this and sent code enforcement out, issued a
That's why this is
violation
up
letter.
now.
And this is the response to that.
Okay.
So what's being proposed, and I'll show pictures in just a second, is a 20-foot travel surface that's still intact. The landscape buffer is, rather than all on one side, it's divided 2 feet on each side of the road. And then rather than a solid fence, both sides of that landscape buffer are planted fairly frequently with trees. And we can move on to the next slide. So this is what was actually constructed. So you see the trees lining the left and right side of the drive axis here. We're looking east. The mountains are kind of a giveaway there, but so rather than 4 feet on one side, we have 2
Who's
feet on
required
each
to
side.
maintain the landscape here?
What's that? The owner of the driveway.
Yeah.
In this case, it's the owner of the rear lot. So this was installed, and when they received the notice of violation, they came and met with staff and asked what they could do. The one answer is you make it comply with code, and we'll work with you on the timeline to do that. And this was another option in the ordinance, is to request this and go through this exception process. So that's what took place. You can go to the next slide, Dan. This is an aerial view. This shows the area in better context. After reviewing this, as staff, we were a little hesitant. This was kind of an ask for forgiveness situation, and we were a little leery of that approach here. However, after reviewing this, and part of the applicant's application was actually signed consent from all of the owners around, so the 3 owners around, the one in the front and then the 2 to the south. They all signed their letter of support, and it doesn't really affect anybody else. You can see that Pine Creek Lane dead ends. These 4 houses are at the end of it, and there's not a real effect anywhere else.
Except for the person that made the
Yeah, who
call, the
made the
code
complaint?
enforcement.
We don't exactly, I don't know who made the call. But I believe it was one of the signers of the letter of support. I don't know what happened, but my understanding is that the original complaint came from someone who then signed the support letter.
Before the
for
improvements were made
application.
or after?
No, it was after.
After the trees and everything were in?
I believe so. So what we have here is a request for 2 exceptions. One is to the 4-foot landscape buffer. There's still 4 feet, but it's divided on both sides of the road. One of the applicant's justifications for that is you can see on the lot to the very top left lot there. There's a parking area there. Nope, straight up.
Top left.
Straight up, right there. The front house there. The driveway, you actually pull under the upper story into a driveway that's behind the house. And there's some concrete pads, and they were having an issue with cars pulling directly over that onto the driveway. So the planted trees here act as a bit of a buffer from making sure cars don't drive over that. It's not a drive approach, it's just a curb there.
So he's protecting his driveway from his neighbor?
Yeah, and you know, what he presented to the planning commission is, you know, he's got kids that sometimes tear through that driveway a little fast, and if you have people running in and out of that concrete, or the parking area on the front lot, that creates potentially a safety issue there. And the trees do help address that. The trees are all planted on the south side of the driveway as well, where the landscape, or the fence would normally be required.
How did they get to the back pad?
This one?
No, the next one back. In the middle.
Yeah, the little garage facing to the south.
This is
That's
an
a good
under,
question.
this is an
Keep
underpad.
going.
No, further.
Keep going.
Other way.
Other way.
Other way.
That one.
That pad.
Do they go over the curb
Looks like they
here?
might access on the curb there.
I think it's a rolling curve, isn't it? And
Yeah.
It looks more like a mowing strip rather than a curb.
But that seems to kind of argue against.
Yeah, it
what
might.
He was saying.
Yeah. The other rationale here is the trees, when they're full grown in, will essentially act as a visual barrier, albeit not a 6-foot solid visual barrier. Once you get to the rear lot of the adjacent property to the south, there actually is a fence already. So right there. So
It's probably
the
bad.
only location that does not have a fence is along the driveway on the front of the lot there. The 20-foot drive aisle is still there. One of the requirements was that they put in no parking signs per the fire department's request along that flag lot driveway. Those are in. So
That's bizarre.
based on the
Who
fact that,
enforces that?
well, yeah, the fire department needs 20 feet to drive through there, so that's,
Who enforces?
yeah, good question.
No parking on the
Good question.
driveway.
Sorry.
But what we have here is essentially, we have a replacement of a visual barrier that was made for an aesthetic purpose. The neighbors consent to that, and actually in the planning commission, no one spoke against this. One neighbor did speak in support of this and said they prefer the trees to a large visual barrier fence there.
What was the vote of the planning commission?
It was unanimous recommendation of approval. And the split of the landscape buffer, you know, that one was, we probably could have gone either way on that, but again, with the support and signature of all 4 neighbors there, and they are right, it is an aesthetic improvement over what the standard ordinance requires. We recommended approval as well.
Okay, any further questions of Mike?
I guess I'm still confused about the letter. You say that you think one of the,
Well, it came through the citizen dashboard.
right?
So I saw the nature of the,
And what was the
the
complaint? What
complaint.
did they not like?
it was the complaint, and we could pull the exact language, but it was along the lines of, how are they able to do this when the code requires something else without getting an exception?
But did we have anybody speak against
No.
them at the planning?
No, and like I said, it was just the last name on the complaint, but it matches the last name of one of the adjacent property
Okay,
owners.
thank you.
Okay. All right, let's move on. This next one will be a little bit interesting.
This is like a repeat of.
Yep,
Okay.
Can I start with this one?
yep, I'm glad you are.
Mike and Shane, are you okay if I
Yes.
start with this?
Yep.
So this, obviously, we had a agenda last, or 2 weeks ago, and there was a process that went through, and it was not technically approved or denied. Shane and Mike and I had met and talked about this, and Shane, if you wouldn't mind, we are going to be putting this back on the agenda, and we wanted, probably in 2 weeks, we wanted to explain the rationale of why it's going back on the agenda. And that's really the reason why we want to talk about this here.
Who requested it to go back on the agenda?
Well, it was us evaluating our process, and Shane, if you, and also consulting with Jody Burnett on this, if you can explain.
Sure. We had,
Can you speak up a little? Sorry.
yes, we had 3 council members at the last council meeting, so a bare quorum. By ordinance, we are, the council is unable to do anything without 3 votes. In the land use context, an applicant has to receive approval or denial. Things can't just be left in limbo. And so 2 ordinances were before the council on both the general plan amendment and the rezone of this piece of property, one for approval, one for denial, so that we had a affirmative action one way or the other that would then trigger things like appeal periods under LUDMA for the applicant. And we didn't get 3 votes one way or the other. So my view.
So that's a denial, right?
It's not enough.
How is
We
it
didn't vote.
It's,
We had,
You have to
had
have
to
3.
vote 3 for denial as well, and we didn't have 3 for that either.
so it's effectively a tabling is what I have come down to on it. We then discussed this with Attorney Jody Burnett, who's our outside consultant on land use issues, and he agreed with that. So these items have essentially been tabled and are subject to being taken off the table and acted on by the council at an upcoming council meeting.
I understand the logic, I do, so.
So it's just a repeat of what was.
Yep. We come back on and so we have 3 votes, one way or the other. If there's any questions, I think you have it in your packet as some of the information. This is something that actually
Can I ask,
Please.
I apologize, I haven't listened to the recording. What, somebody said no, what was the rationale?
I looked at, there was, talked about it, general plan wise, everything is R1. If we were gonna do this to an R2, should we not make that general to the area or not? I'm honestly would be really curious to hear what, this is your district, and it's right there, so I'm curious what your opinion is. But that, I hadn't had enough time to digest, it's kind of like going all through it, so.
The planning commission, there's some good comments there that I encourage people to read.
Yeah, there were, yeah.
The planning commission voted that it not be changed.
That's right, yeah, and that was the planning
Spot
commission.
zone.
Yeah, spot zoning
Was one of their concerns, which I kind of echoed. I certainly understand the applicant's rationale as well. It's still keeping the same number of units per acre.
Well, and the units on both sides of it are.
But you also have one unbuildable lot, so it's kind of.
Scott, so I wondered this after. Would you have been more in support if the general plan amendment would have included those other homes that are already duplexes?
It was kind of a question. I have to look at that as well. But yeah, it seemed like it kind of, with general plan wise, it's a little specific. But that wasn't brought up. The application was only for just this one.
Yeah.
And part of it was, I was looking to chew on it just a little bit more. And again, on this particular one, I would be really interested to hear what Christine has to say, because that's, I can see good rationale either way.
As I can. Yeah. But it's a unique lot because of the faults that go through part of it.
And that may be enough. And
North end, and so, anyway.
it was one of those disadvantages of having 3 people there and not having us all in complete agreement on everything.
So if there's quick questions someone has now, we can talk about it real quickly. It's going to be on the business agenda on the 19th.
Groundhog Day. Right? No, I'm just kidding, I meant like the movie,
I was saying,
where
it
we're
is.
gonna be voting on ADUs.
How ironic.
Well,
I mean, do you have enough information on that? Do you have an opinion one way or the other? Or do you want to kind of hold that?
I prefer to think about it a little bit more, driven by, and
Through the planning commission process, how did the neighbors, what was their sentiment?
Well, we took public comment.
Yeah, the minutes are in the packet. I don't know all of them, but one of the prevailing concerns was of it being used as a ski rental, short-term rental. The law by code, it's not allowed there. It's on a public street and it's not part of a development. That was a concern that was heard. And I think the spot zoning concern was raised by maybe a few of the members of the public, but strongly by 1 or 2 members of the planning commission.
what does that mean for us legally?
So spot zoning is not illegal in the state of Utah. you can have a spot zone. It's specific.
But what was their concern then about the spot zoning?
That it was.
They just don't.
Unfair.
Yeah.
It's kind of manipulation, some people will say there.
Yeah, and our rationale was, I presented this at
But
the
if
previous
the
meeting. but-
existing homes that are on that street now would not qualify for existing zoning.
Correct, yeah, with
It's really a
the
unique street.
the development around it and then the
The
size of the lots and the constraints
Yeah,
on the
it's-
lot, create one buildable area on 1 acre. Whether that's one unit or two, the density is still that of low-density residential, even though it would be a two-family dwelling. There's only there's one very specific footprint that a building can go there, so that's.
It almost fairly begs the question,
It's
if
in
you
a-
did do the general plan change,
Yeah.
how many of the other
Yeah.
lots would
But it's
now
also.
unbuildable paths?
Yes, on the both sides. Yeah, it's really kind of a strange thing. But look at it and see.
Well, yeah.
Okay, it'll be back on the 19th, and feel free to ask Mike questions and get educated further, and we'll vote on it then. Okay. Mike, or Tim, I should say, budget amendments.
Yes, so, let me see, on this, can you make it a little bit larger?
I don't know.
I hope, okay. Scott Jurgis isn't here, so I am presenting this budget amendment proposal. This is not going to be coming to you until the 19th, so this is our opportunity to just help you understand what we are proposing and looking at. I'm going to walk quickly.
Zoom in one more time, Dan.
We did make it, or we did bring it to our budget committee an hour or so, or an hour and a half ago. They have looked at it, they had some questions that we're gonna have clarification when we bring this to you fully on the meeting on the 19th. But let me walk through it real quickly. Starting off with the general plan, or the general fund, we have, as you know, we're finishing the finalization of having 3 city manager, the finance and administration, and our new department. So we're bringing the budget line to have those 3 areas have their budgets. So we have the expenses that we're reallocating into their proper areas. That doesn't impact the funding, it's just reallocating into those budget areas. So both city manager, finance, and then our records, cultural, and HR area. And that's what the first part on the reallocations is. We also have some severance funding. We did have some of the payouts for our assistant city manager that was included in the budget, but there is the final amount of the severance payout, which is $50,000 that we're including in this. So that would be taken from the fund balance to finish that. That is a portion of the budget amendment. Then moving on to the general fund, we have a need for additional server storage replacement in IT. Some of the issues that we have is related to speed and reliability with our existing server storage. Mike's area with our GIS, a good example of that is with our existing server storage. It's taking minutes to get things refreshed in our GIS area rather than seconds, which is impacting our efficiency in that area. And so this is a need that we've known that we have needed for a while. And so we're proposing.
Catching up on your reading, though.
What's that? It is. So we're proposing $45,000 out of the fund balance for that. Then our police DUI overtime through our state grant, we've received the revenue on that, and so we're proposing that the expense line item be reimbursed for that. That's something we've anticipated for some time, and we received that funding, so that we have to allocate that revenue that is coming in to address the expense.
This is just extra shifts at various times, it's not a specific
A DUI,
stop or something like that.
something. Who's reimbursed it?
The state.
State.
Then item number 4 there, or can you go up?
I actually,
Okay, right there. Item 4, we are proposing to move road striping that is actually allocated in the general fund to the capital improvement fund. That's just taking 36,000 from the general fund and moving it to capital. I'll show you where that will go into capital in just a minute. Can you go on to the second page? Items,
I don't see, here we go.
there we go. Items 5 and 6, we have the Arts Council ZAP grant of 13,000 that will not be expended until after July 1st. So we're proposing to move that forward to the next budget. So that would be taking it out of this budget because we won't expend it in this budget. Same with our Historic Committee ZAP grant as well. There's 10,000 there that we would move to next year's budget because the funds will be expended at that point. And then we have on the Arts Council, and this is an area that we'll clarify because there were questions of our budget committee on this, but we'll clarify it for next week. We have some carry forward from previous funding that we have that will be carried forward. We did include this in our last budget amendment. There's 12,000, but that was not the correct amount, and so we will reduce that by 12,000. It was 27,000, so the total will be 15,000 that will be carried forward. Once again, we're clarifying that, and we'll have answers to make sure that's clarified as we bring it to you next, or 2 weeks.
Right now, that's asking for 73,000?
73,000 plus 50,000 of that severance, so the total would be 123,501 of the general fund that we will use from fund balance.
Okay.
Then, moving to capital, moving to a different fund, the Capital Improvement Fund. As you're all aware, you approved the Brighton High Retention Pond construction, an interlocal agreement with a capped amount of 45,000. We want to get that in the budget so we're ready to reimburse for that project. It's not completed, but that was our maximum amount that we committed to, was 45,000. And then you see the second part of the one that I previously talked about, the moving the road striping from general fund to the Capital Improvement Fund, which shows that allocation there. So that is our Capital Improvement Fund amounts.
A total of about an increase of $175,000.
175 in general fund and then
Just everywhere.
175 basically in general fund.
Yeah, it was 120.
When you reduce the 36, you're right. So we'll have the additional clarifications at the next meeting, but we did talk about this. Had a extensive, very in detail discussion on this with our
Budget committee.
Yeah.
I'll throw out 2 questions once again. 2 things, or 3 things actually. One is the 50,000 for severance. I understood we have it in the budget already.
We never did.
We never put it in. Secondly, that if not, I still question why they cannot take that out of deferred compensation of that account.
So,
$500,000 in there.
deferred compensation. I think one thing to know here, and I shouldn't say this because he knows better than I, but that amount was far in excess. The amount that we paid in severance is far in excess of the 50,000 we said there. So a good portion of it, better than half of it, was already covered from existing budget monies.
Correct.
Because I thought we left one of those salaries in there to cover it. And we had the 2 salaries. I thought we left it all in there to cover it. I don't know the details.
The issue is we didn't have, well, the 2 salaries in there. I thought the assistant city manager salary was taken out. That was taken out.
And I asked the same question. So,
Yes.
and the finance position came in almost at the same
At the
time.
same time.
that the
So
other
because
one-
of that, we didn't have any
Yeah,
excess.
so I figured that's the way it is, and I trust that. Then my question though is that if we put money in that deferred compensation line item, it cannot be used to cover severance?
I believe it can, and we could take it out of that line item. I need to see how much we have in there, because that's covering what we feel like we would not, what we would cover if people were.
That's an actuarially established number, so if you did, you'd have to
build it back up.
Yeah, but some budgets don't have it at all, but we've been very
So when do we use, when would we use
When
that?
people retire.
People retire.
People retire.
Or-
FMLA?
Well, yeah, it's like when Mr. Parker
I
retired.
don't know this, maybe other people who
No,
are
it's-
listening, so if you could
it's,
just elaborate on.
Sick leave, vacation.
It's the payout if people retire
Yeah.
on their PTO.
So did we use that when
Paid
the
time off.
previous city manager retired? Did we use those funds?
I believe we did for, because we had that bill for him. But the severance portion of this was
It's a
not.
little
It's a
different.
different kind of,
It's a
Yeah, that's why I
different-
asked if that's, maybe that's,
Well, maybe we need, yeah.
I just asked you a question.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that, maybe if that's the intent, then we need to look at what severance contracts we have and build that into the actuarial as well.
I don't feel like the severance portion was ever built into that PTO
It probably wasn't.
liability account.
But I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, it wasn't built into that, and if, we would need to build into that through the budget process to do that. I feel like taking it from fund balance is the best place to do in this situation.
But it's not just retirement that that's used for, it's for separation, right?
as in, well,
But it wasn't anticipated in our
Well,
PTO
none of
liability.
them are
fund.
ever anticipated, but anybody who has accrued sick leave or vacation, when they leave, they can be here a year, you need to get something, that's what it's for.
yeah.
We can definitely look at
So I
that.
see severance as the same,
But it's, I mean, it's
Because
probably
it's an obligation.
exceptional in terms of how we calculated the amount of deposits into that fund.
So
to think of it that
I mean,
way.
I'm fine doing this because it comes out the same thing, but when you set aside that money for these types of things, it seems logical that you're using it for exception, yeah, and build it up over the years again. But you might get that, Scott, you can come back and recommend, no, it's not.
We'll be
good
prepared.
accounting.
But that one's, because we just have the two cases of severance currently under contract.
Correct. We'll be prepared to talk about that as well as the other question.
The other one too, and Mike, you remember this too, it seems like when we did our budget last time, that the IT department did come in and ask for some capital. But this is, so I'm surprised you're coming in now and asking again mid-year.
I don't believe.
There's a lot more coming.
Yeah, I knew there was.
I think we
there was
did a
lot
budget,
more.
I think, my recollection, this is one of the things we said we'd look into, is that we did a budget amendment to include some things that are not these things.
Okay.
We'll be prepared to
Which
talk about
you'll
that.
hear about again in a subsequent conversation.
You know, I knew when we did our last budget, there was like several big things coming in the next couple of years. So we chose to do a piece during this current budget cycle. So I'm surprised a little bit that we have an adjustment.
At mid-year.
Yeah, because we kind of came before us and did our budget process. But I'll just throw out those questions and.
We'll be prepared to address those.
Okay, so we know we're thinking, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane.
Item G is Shane's going to talk about the quorum in public meetings, and then we're going to move into a closed session real quickly if we can have enough time to talk about security. Right?
5 minutes.
All right. So Shane?
2 minutes. Time me.
Wow. Anybody do it in 1 minute?
It's cars at Indy.
That's like Cheryl, do it in 200 words.
Paul asked me to kind of give a lead-in to his presentation on security procedures concerning what are the legal parameters, what can the council do if somebody is disruptive in a city council meeting. And so there's a Utah statute in the municipal code that says that the governing body on a 2/3 vote can expel any person who's disorderly during the meeting of the governing body. So the trick is going to be deciding what level of action, what would constitute being disorderly. And my recommendation on that is to be a little conservative about what you consider disorderly. I've seen it perhaps once in my 20 years of attending city council meetings, and But that option is there.
Once and it was us?
No, it
It
was,
happened once here.
it was in another place, not too far.
Before I was on, I heard the story.
Anyway, so I'll, legal counsel will be there when this is happening, I imagine, and I suggest that there probably ought to be a little bit of communication at that time. But somebody can make a motion and a second, and then a 2/3 vote to expel somebody who's disorderly. That
So 2/3 though is.
2/3, it's 4.
Yeah.
Now,
Always, or is it the those present?
I think that it's going to be. I think it's going to be 4. It's.
So if you have 3 people, and you're just out of luck.
Yeah, you're just out of luck.
You're just out of luck.
It's
Take the tomatoes.
kind of part of the thing we deal with our size council and the quorum and that sort of thing. What this statute also says is that the expulsion is not necessarily the end of it. The person can also be subject to other criminal sanctions for the action. So those criminal sanctions, potential criminal sanctions, would be being charged with a 3rd-degree felony if the person, here's the statutory language, prevents any public servant from meeting or organizing to perform a lawful governmental function. And the other option is a Class B misdemeanor if the person intentionally disturbs an official meeting or commits any disorderly conduct in immediate view and presence of the participants in an official meeting tending to interrupt its proceedings.
What was the first one? Read that.
That's if they prevent the meeting, they prevent the meeting from occurring or prevent somebody from performing their lawful governmental functions. Okay. So anyway, those options are there. I suggest being careful about expelling people, but it is available if it becomes necessary.
Fortunately, most people will think, if someone is, if you mentioned something like that to them, then being able to disrupt it, they'll.
I think the printing of the decorum expectation on our speaker cards has been helpful.
Yes. So that's all I had, just a little bit of information.
May I have a quick walk-on item that's kind of decorum related as well?
Okay.
And reading our Cottonwood Heights policy, section 7, paragraph 15B, an employee shall not use the employee's title or position while engaging in political activity or otherwise act to imply the city's approval of a candidate or political issue. So Chief Russo has been up on the Hill advocating specific legislation with Marie Wilson.
As has Tim.
I don't remember us as a council ever advocating or voting or even discussing this.
Yeah, the only thing I remember is at the legislative breakfast, Marie brought up, we went around the table and we asked what other issues or things were they advocating that they'd like to share with us. And if I remember correctly, and I could be off, I thought that she mentioned that and she appreciated the help, technical assistance of the city in that regard. That's the only thing I remember.
I never got a vision of that in detail, having the chief up there in uniform and advocating as if representing the city. I feel like it's
We do this a lot. I think you have a good point, but we do it a lot.
so it isn't
Tim does it.
We're acting against the policy.
Tim goes and.
No, I don't see that at all.
The policy's pretty clear. I mean, it's crystal clear.
Okay, well, then you could say that having discussed it at the legislative breakfast, not having opposition, you do that.
I'm not sure saying we should have legislative breakfast. I mean, that was so.
She casually mentioned that she was gonna run a bill.
Yeah, yeah.
That was it.
Right.
For
That was
sure,
it.
I agree, I just, yeah. But I think this is something we need to talk about and see what parameters we want to set or what guardrails we want to set.
Well, we've got parameters right here, so what would our legal counsel say about, this is definitely a policy, and we're definitely in violation of it.
I would have to read it. I'm a visual learner rather than.
You want me to pass it over to you?
Yeah, that's great.
So one thing I would say related to bills, and we're commenting on bills and giving information to Brian Allen on bills to convey concerns, issues. We're doing that as part of league policy as well through the ULCT.
Yeah, but most of what we do, I think, is about local control. We're really guarding our local control, or we're taking a policy position that we've made each year, and we're making sure that the legislation supports those policy decisions that we've talked about and we voted on. HB 411, for example, right? We as a council voted a certain way. There's a piece of legislation, and I think we know whether we should support it or not. I think in areas where, as a council, we haven't talked about a specific policy, I feel like it's difficult for you and I to sort of say, oh, we think this or that. I feel uncomfortable about that. I think, from 441, which is the tax policy, I think we could all agree that that's well, we don't even know what the implications are of that. So it's hard for me to say with great gusto that we support it. So and I'm a policy, like I was voted here for policy positions. And that's why I think that's why I sit on that LPC. I think where I tend to agree with Callie, when you see a picture of one of your staff members in the paper, like, wait a second, I don't remember talking about this one, and so you're just like, whoa, maybe we should talk about that.
But the mayor's gone up there and done that. The city manager's done it from day one.
Well, I've only been here 3 months.
I'm just saying, and that is extremely common, you'll see that.
If we want to rewrite the policy, we can rewrite the policy, but this is how it stands. So how do you speak to our violation of the policy?
Okay,
Yeah, and I don't know what's happened, but I think that 15E is pretty clear, isn't it?
It's pretty clear. And in addition, I know that Chief Russo's had the press, even out here today, advocating for his position on policy at the legislature. So I think it's pretty crystal clear we're in violation of the policy.
Well, but part of the issue, and I communicated this in writing, I mean, I made the council aware of this issue and that our work on this issue with the chief, and I didn't get any opposition in that writing at the time that occurred prior to the chief going to testify in this.
Well, I guess maybe what I'd like to say is that in the future, because we want to learn from things that occur, if anything where we or anybody of us that are going to be testifying on behalf of the city, I think that it shouldn't be in writing in a memo, because I'm just looking at this one that you sent us. I don't know how many pages it is, but I venture to say that it's 50 or 100 pages of what we're talking about tonight. The memo.
The memo was my weekly memo to you.
It's just usually a couple pages.
Which is a couple pages, but I think that it necessitates a call out. I would support that. I think Tally would, that's too, I guess. I feel strongly about this issue too. And
what is the issue?
Bill or
No, that if a city, if anyone, including Christine, and Christine who represents the council, if she's going to take a position or anyone else, that we have a discussion about it, and we know that we have a position of the city council.
Couldn't I just as easily go up and testify and say, as a representative of the city, I'm a city council member and I'm here to argue against this bill? I could do that on any given bill. I would be in clear violation of this, but so is the chief.
And you would be in clear violation of the council policy that prohibits that as well.
My only issue is I talked about this. It may not be a formal. Well, there was discussion at a legislative breakfast. There was communication that this was occurring.
I respect you, Tim, immensely, but bringing up a legislative breakfast where it was, I would say, so informal and so sort of, well, this is what I'd like to do, without knowing that there was a bill number or bill file or any of those things.
Or that the bill was co-sponsored by our chief. But none of that was discussed in any formal context at that legislative breakfast. It was a very informal, chatty session. There's additional concern in that some of the testimony that Roosevelt provided was inaccurate. He stated that a PI can get a court order for a tracking device. That's not true.
Okay, well, I guess we need either to discuss the policy or the issue.
Right.
Okay,
So I'm going with the policy, but
Okay, but no,
additionally.
you're going with, you're citing a specific issue, which, again, with it being in the council communication, which we're responsible to read and respond to, and, I mean, if you missed it, then I guess I'm
So
saying.
this is a
If you
question
missed it, then
to
too bad.
teach
I'm
me
just
this.
At some point, yes.
Teach me this,
Uh,
Scott,
some
and
point,
maybe you
yes.
know, because you've been on the council forever and I'm a newbie. Is it within the parameters of the city manager to unilaterally make that sort of decision and then just inform us? Is that how it works?
We have, especially with things with legislative, we have gotten calls. We need some help on this particular thing or this thing that's in the city's interest, and to have.
And the city manager makes a unilateral decision.
A couple of points are made up, before we can spend a lot of time on this. One is if an employee is a co-sponsor, somebody just said that term.
Yeah, is that permissible?
Well, that would concern me if.
I'm not a co-sponsor.
You can't be a
I'm
co-sponsor
not
unless you're a
elected
legislator.
official.
So I don't know, you can be a co-sponsor, that's one thing. If we're sponsoring, or we're providing technical assistance, we're just providing information or a request. I'm comfortable with staff participating under the supervision of the city manager if it's providing just technical assistance and just information. Okay, now, like you said, if they're a co-sponsor or who
Well,
are
we have-
leading the fight.
If they're advocating for in public, that's the question, I think.
Yeah,
we're
Yeah, we
taking.
do have a Tribune,
Yeah.
color photograph in the Tribune of our chief in uniform sitting next to Marie Polson presenting this bill as a partnership, as a pair. That, to
Well,
me, is in clear violation of our policy.
Yeah, well, I have to.
I need to know that this policy means something.
Yeah. But I guess I would ask, if in some form of analysis, either through legal counsel or through city manager, if what happened and what the detail was.
If nothing comes of this, it's a clear indication that our policy means nothing.
Oh, let me just say that I think historically, if your reading of the policy is correct, historically, we have violated that policy over and over and over again. I'm not saying that that's right,
I don't know if that's even the case.
but
So maybe we need to do a case study of how often we violate our own policies.
Or
And
define
how
the
we're gonna move
policy,
forward.
or define a policy where it's very clear.
It's crystal
that-
clear.
Well,
I can say, if he was given authorization to do so, then I don't see that it's a violation.
Unilateral authorization
Can I
by
see
the
that?
city manager.
Well, that's, in a lot of cases, that's his
No,
job. But-
once it was brought to my attention in email, I assumed that it was appropriate only because I interpreted from what limited information I had, the request of one of our other elected officials, she asked for some technical assistance. Now, if it's further than that, then I'm not familiar with what that is, to what level it is. Okay? It's like if anyone calls and asks for, someone
Answering
to-
questions is a little different than showing up on the Hill in uniform and advocating.
Well, let's follow that logic, I guess. If we have the tier 2 discussion, all the police and firefighters that showed up in uniform to show their support for that bill, I guess you would argue that they're in violation too. If I am called as a witness, and I was asked to be a witness in this, then I'm certainly going to appear and answer the questions and present the information that they're asking for. No one here can, in clear conscience, say that they didn't know, and what you can say it was informal or whatever you want. But at that legislative breakfast, she talked about what she was going to do, and you're all nodding your heads in agreement. I didn't hear any opposition to it. If you wanted to have an opposition, I would have done it differently. I certainly can go up and out of uniform, and I have every right in the world to express my opinion, as does anyone else. In this case, I didn't see it. It is a law enforcement issue. It's an issue that I believe is important to the citizens in the city and in the state in general. So I did support it, and I will continue to support it.
Yeah, then the point made, which I appreciate, is that when you do that, are you representing the city officially or yourself. I guess that's the policy.
I guess that.
Well, this policy prohibits an employee using their title or position, whether they were authorized or not, funny enough. I mean, we couldn't even say by this policy, yeah, it's okay to go do that, because this policy prohibits them using their title or position
To what?
to imply the city's approval of a political issue. I mean, breaking it down.
So Shane, when we violate our policy, what is the consequence?
We violate our own policies. I don't think that there's a legal consequence. I don't think it's a criminal act, misdemeanor, felony, whatever. We have violated our policy, and if these are...
Well, it's progressive discipline up to the supervisor.
So is there a write-up? Does this go into a
Well,
formal
okay, now we're getting
evaluation?
we're getting into personnel issues here that should not be in the public meeting right now, in my opinion.
I just need to know that our policy has some teeth, or is it just meaningless?
Well, we'll put it back on the agenda, and we'll talk about it.
Well, I'll have to address it because it's an administrative issue. That's how I would answer it.
And I'll work with Tim administrative to look at that going forward.
It appeared to me that if there's an administrative issue, it points to you as well, so, and all the city managers before you as well.
Okay. Well, and just so there's no surprise, I believe there's an article tonight with your likeness in there on the Deseret News, with your picture in there too,
I'm
so.
not aware of it, if there is.
Well, I wasn't aware of the other photo, but there is.
What's
You
it
might want to,
regarding?
you might want to take a look at that.
I read the article.
Well,
I saw it.
okay, where we're gonna go right now.
That's not anything I advocated for.
We're gonna go to a closed meeting, and then Tim's gonna follow
Sure
through
it is.
with this, and I'll work with Tim, and then maybe back to redefine. Thanks for giving that attention. I need a motion to close, to talk
we
about
want to close.
security.
Oh,
Motion to close? Do we have one?
Scott,
Name?
motion to close? You're the best at that.
This was for security. We close the open